Hi guys, Phil here from Dunk Factory Australia. In today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you my personal strategy for collecting Michael Jordan 90s inserts without the PSA 10 price tag, but still giving you potential for massive growth in the future. The biggest problem that collectors face today are the prices that PSA 10s demand, especially when we're talking about Michael Jordan cards. With PSA 10 prices on some of Jordan's most iconic and scarce cards being out of reach for 99% of collectors, I'm going to show you how I've personally selected and purchased some of Jordan's most desirable cards and seen huge growth over the last 6 to 8 months. So whether you're new to the hobby or you're a long-time Jordan collector, you're going to want to watch this video through to the end as I show you how you can upgrade your Jordan game on a budget. There is a big difference in both scarcity and desirability between the overprinted Jordan base cards from the junk wax era and the beautifully designed mid-90s inserts with a far lower print run. The key factors you want to look for when using the PSA 789 theory are as follows. The first thing you want to look for is a high PSA 10 value. This generally proves demand amongst buyers and also generally coincides with a lower pop count in that grade. The second thing I look for is low pop count. Now, not just in the PSA 10s, I'm talking about a combined PSA 9 and 10 total pop count of somewhere between 250 to 300 total. Now, this combined with the high PSA 10 price can push demand down to the lower levels in PSA grading. The third thing I look for are high pack odds. Pretty self-explanatory, but the scarcer the card, the higher the price potential, and also the higher the demand. And the fourth and final thing on the list is eye appeal. If the card has great eye appeal and a beautiful design, it's going to add to demand from buyers. If you can find a card that meets all four of these criteria, then this can make for a great long-term investment. Now you can do some research for the values of PSA 7s, 8s and 9s in the types of cards that you want to purchase and find one that best suits your budget. I'm going to start screen sharing now and I'm going to bring up my card ladder and we're going to go through 3 real life examples of the types of cards that I'm referring to. If you don't have card ladder, I would certainly recommend giving it a go. I use Card Ladder for pricing all of my cards prior to purchasing. I also use it to look at the population count, the gem rate, and all of the card values. If you're a serious collector, it's a must-have in my opinion. Today we're going to look at 3 cards that are in my personal collection. The first card on the list is the 1996 Ultra Full Court Trap. Now, this card in hand is a really beautiful thing to see. The way that sort of galaxy type swirl in the background of Jordan reflects is quite nice in hand. A very tough card to grade, especially with the foil front and the black edging on the back. But I own this copy in a PSA 7. Now, this is a relatively low grade for what I like to collect, but you'll understand where I'm going with this as we go further. So this card I owned as a child and I sent it in for grading. So essentially my cost on this was $0 minus the grading fees obviously. So about $40 odd. So when I sent that off to grading, the current market value on this card was about $184. So if we have a look at this graph, we can see a steady growth over the last, well, it's August last year, over the last 10 months. And the current price is at $566. So that's a growth of a little over 210% over the last 8 months. So quite a nice return if you are into the market at this point. And this is a card that signals to me that it has potential for further growth. And let's go into the numbers a little deeper and I'll show you why. So if we have a look at the gem rate on this card, we're at 1.5% gem rate. So it's a super tough card to grade, which ticks our first box. Now, if we switch this over to the PSA 10 and we have a look at the prices, right, the most recent sale was in November 13th in 2025 for almost $18,300 Australian dollars. Now, It hasn't been sold since November, obviously last year, and what that means is Card Ladder is estimating the value on this card to be around the $26,000. So that hits our mark with a high PSA 10 value. Now if we go down further, we look at the pop count. In a PSA 10, this is only our pop 23. Combine that with the PSA 9 pop count, and we're looking at only, 210 in total. So that hits the next criteria. We've got a low gem rate, we've got a low pop count, and a high PSA 10 value. If you're lucky enough to be able to afford this card in a PSA 9, I'd jump out and grab one. Now, buying these cards at this grade, you'd be very lucky if you're ever going to get it for that price, or even find one at all. But what I would suggest is, besides your obvious choices like auction house websites and places like eBay, I would suggest looking through your local card groups on Facebook. That's where I've done a lot of my purchases, and you seem to be getting cards, closer to comps than you will on these auction sites. So look, if the PSA 9's out of reach, you can jump down to a PSA 8. Once again, you've got to find one for this value. You're probably going to pay overs in the current Jordan market, but it is a higher population at 562, so that's not a concern, because we're looking above this at a PSA 9 and 10. Now these cards in a PSA 10, they're locked in some collector's private collection. You're probably never going to see one in your lifetime, and if you do, you won't be able to afford it. So once again, with the PSA 9, that puts pressure down to the PSA 9, where people that want this card are going to pay top price for one of those if they come available. But the PSA 8 is available with a pop 562. And once again, if that's out of your budget, you can push down to the PSA 7, and you can pick up one of those for about $570. This is a card that if you're really, really super budget conscious, I don't like to go below a PSA 7, hence the PSA 789 blueprint. But, if you just want to add one of these to your collection, you can pick up a PSA 6 for a little over a couple of $100. So that's card number 1 that I wanted to identify. And just show you the figures and the numbers which we work with to identify cards that have a good potential for future growth. And the final thing we want to look at are the pack odds. Now the pack odds for this card are 1 in 15 packs. It is a 10 card set, so that puts the Jordan insert specifically to 1 in 150 packs. So in closing on this one, that's the 1996 Ultra Full Court Trap, Michael Jordan. This does also have a gold parallel, which is a little bit more harder to get hold of and carries a higher value. I believe the pack odds for that are about 1 in 180, which makes the Jordan 1 in 1800. So that's quite rare to find. If you do come across one and you can get hold of it, by all means, I suggest you grab it. But anyway, we'll move on to the second card. So the second card we're going to look at today is a 1995 Skybox Premium Larger Than Life. Now, I own this copy in a PSA 8, and this is a card that I actually brought back in June last year, so pretty much getting close to right on 12 months ago. And if we have a look at the growth on this card, it's gone up by a rate of 300% since my purchase. So I brought it back here, there we go, on June 22nd for $492. And since then we've had a nice sort of slow rise with a one bad sale, and then it's peaked back up now at $1,847. So as you can see, that's an amazing return. And this is a card that I really believe will hold really great growth for the future. And I'll show you why. If we go into the pop count, we can have a look at the PSA 10. Now, if you notice over here, this card has a gem rate of only 0.58%. So it is a super, super rare card. And that's due to the double gold foiling on the front and the back. We'll have a look at that again in a minute, but for now, let's have a look at the pricing. So the PSA 10 last sold on December 11th in 2020 for $7,838 Australian. Because this hasn't sold for so long, we don't have any current comps. But if we scroll down, Card Ladder believes that this card now, if it come to the market, based on Jordan's rising index, would be valued at $33,000, almost $34,000. As you can see, it's a pop 5, so almost impossible to gem, which, because of the low pop, really increases the PSA 9 value. Once again, it's only a pop 45 in a PSA 9, and Card Ladder's valuing that at $11,000. Now let's just have a look at the recent sales, because I think they're pretty close. So there you go. The last sale was on June the 1st, so only a week ago, and that was for $11,000. So if we have a look at the total pop, we're looking at only 50 in the 9s and 10s combined, which is why I think that this is one of the better cards if you can get your hands on a copy to get hold of. Now, even if we push back to the 8, we're only at approximately 250 odd between the 3 grades, which is what we're really looking for in 9s and 10s. So this card definitely hits the mark. Now, obviously, the price is a bit of a premium on the PSA 8 due to the minimal pop above, but you can push back to a PSA 7 on this, and in a pop 304, they do become available, and you're looking at around $625 Australian. Once again, finding cards for the estimated prices or the market prices are always hard because everybody's trying to win and get a little bit extra on the next sale. But if you use your smarts and you shop around and you keep your eye on some auctions, you might be able to find one. Now, once again, I don't like to go below a 7 with my blueprint, but if you just really want to get this card in your collection, I could still see that there would be potential growth at a PSA 6 level. You do rule out a lot of collectors, because a lot of collectors won't like to go below 7 or an 8. You know, a lot of them don't like to go below a 9 or a 10, but those middle class collectors like myself, you know, a 7 or an 8's fine. It's still a nice looking copy of a super rare card in a PSA slab. Now, if we just go back to this card, we'll just have a quick look at the foiling. So this is one of Jordan's few cards, besides a few of his refractors, maybe one or two others, that actually have gold or foiling on both sides of the card. So if you can see in these images here, you've got a nice picture of Jordan in the white uniform with a gold background, and on the back, another cool picture of Jordan in his red uniform with that gold foiling behind. So it's a really, really beautiful card to have in your hand. And the pack odds on this particular card is 1 in 48. Now, once again, it's a 10 card set, so the Michael Jordan card is a 1 in 480 packs. So as you can see, the pack odds are a little higher, but the gem rate on this is super, super low, so it makes this a really, really hard card to find in a nice copy. Now, the third and final card that we're going to look at today is the 1998 UD Choice StarQuest Red. Now, this is a parallel of an insert, so this card does come in, I believe, a blue and a green, and it does come in a gold parallel numbered to 100. So they're a super rare card and super hard to get. So this card I brought only recently, and I did pay $900 for this card in a private sale, so it's not reflected on Card Ladder, but I did pay $900 on a Facebook group in a private sale. And so you can see here my purchase was, it says $919. That must be including postage. And we've just had a recent sale for $950. So look, there's not much growth in this one yet, but I've only had it for a month or 6 weeks. But you look at this steady growth here since August last year. You could pick up this card for $140, and now it's selling for almost $1,000. So you can see the rate of growth on these cards, if you get in at the right time, is exponential. So this is a card that I think will have a long-term growth, because you've got that colour match red with the Jordan, and then in a red PSA slab, you've got a triple threat there. So let's just go in and have a quick look at the pop count. So this card's got another low gem rate, 5.56, so that's a tick. We scroll down here, let's have a quick look at the PSA 10. So the most recent sale was on February, so about 3 or 4 months ago, for $7,800 Australian. Now, the guy that had this last, we're only looking, 2 years, and it's gone up 3 times. So this is a card that I feel will continue to grow in the future. When you're looking at the pop count, once again, PSA 10, we're only looking at a pop 18, guys. You drop that down to a 9, it's a pop 88, so what's that, 106 cards in a pop in PSA 9 and 10. Even when you're going back to PSA 8 level, it's still giving us a total pop of around 250. So this is another really good card to identify. It meets all the criteria. You can pick this card up roughly for $1,000 in a PSA 8. If that's a little bit out of your price range, pull back to the 7 at $650. Again, still only a pop 60. You know, once again, I don't like to go below a 7, but if your budget allows, you can pick up a PSA 6 for under $300. Now here's where things get interesting. The pack odds on this card are 1 in 23 packs, which sounds quite reasonable. But this is a 30 card set. So to hit the Jordan StarQuest Red, you're looking at 1 in 690 pack odds. So this is the highest of the pack odds. And you know, it is quite a rare card. It's hard to grade in a high grade. So with the red on red, this is a card that I think has a massive future, and I could see this thing continuing to rise over the next 5 to 10 years. So there you have it. You don't have to be a millionaire to purchase some of Michael Jordan's top tier cards. In the current market, with prices across all PSA grades constantly breaking all-time highs, you just need to be smarter with the way you collect, and when making purchases, buying the right cards to add to your collection. So in summary, the types of cards that we've outlined in today's video, the low pop, iconic inserts and parallels with great eye appeal in PSA 7s, 8s and 9s will be less likely to be hit by a declining market and will give you a better long-term upside. If you made it this far, I want to thank you for staying through to the end. If you liked the video, please give us a like and a subscribe for future content. I'll see you all again in the next video. Until then, stay safe and happy collecting.